We know that the vast bulk of this is stolen in a combination of cyber means and people physically, often in places like universities. In terms of actual dollar figures, I don't think anyone can put a figure on it, but I do know of one example where a company lost about 30% of its sales when its very unique IP was stolen and was found inside Chinese manufactured goods that were based on their designs.
The ASIO boss touched on the example that you're referring to when an Australian business lost its IP after an employee allowed someone else to plug in a USB to their laptop at a conference. Can you give us other examples of how businesses in Australia are being targeted? You've touched on some of them, but just to give us more of an idea of what businesses can do to prevent this happening to them.
Yes, I'll use an example of tertiary institutions. We've certainly seen nation-state activity stealing research from universities. When you think about why universities do research, ultimately you want it to become part of our mainstream economic activities. Research isn't just done for research's sake. So they are pretty regular targets. They've been warned by the federal government over a series of years to be more cautious in who they partner with, so that's the physical component, and then obviously be more sophisticated in their cyber defences. And then there's the industrial manufacturing company that was referred to by the Director General, where we saw significant harm, and I'd say everywhere in between is impacted by this type of activity.
The Chinese state and Chinese companies have been blamed for masterminding hacks on companies as big as Microsoft and Apple. What is the answer? Is part of the answer to move manufacturing outside China?
Well, it's not necessarily where things are manufactured that matters, it's how you protect them. I mean, China's a great place to manufacture things. I don't think anyone's suggesting not to. What I think the best solution would be is China not stealing IP, buying it where necessary, developing their own, which they're very capable of doing. So you'll see the Chinese government often respond pretty viciously in these types of circumstances, where they say that it's the West trying to stop free trade, when really it's the West trying to protect free trade. Our whole economic system is based on if someone makes a discovery, invests in something new, that they get the advantage associated with doing that until such time as patents and all those other things roll off. China has been responsible for a massive reduction in wealth from the West and transferring that to itself.
Did the US make the right decision when it announced today that it would further extend its restrictions on China re NVIDIA AI chips?
Well, their argument is that those chips can be used to help China accelerate its military capabilities, and clearly the Americans are concerned of that. More broadly, we have the issue of critical technologies where we're realising not just where things are manufactured but where they're controlled from matters, and clearly the Americans, and I would say they're right, think it's important to restrict access to this type of technology by a state that doesn't have their best interests at heart.
Now, geographically, we are quite a distance away from the unfolding war in Israel and Gaza, but you are warning that the Australian government's condemnation of Hamas could see reprisal attacks against Australian business.
Well, we released an intelligence assessment about a week ago that said just any organisation that either has operations in Israel or who has come out and in support of probably of either side, runs an increased risk of things like denial of service attacks and possibly website defacements, reasonably low-level activities. There is an additional problem that Hamas being linked to Iran and, of course, the Israelis both use cyber as a means of trying to carry out their strategic objectives. There's always a risk of a contagion effect of a cyber tool that moves laterally into systems outside the geographic area. We saw that in 2017 when the Russians, in a cyber attack on Ukraine, released a thing that was known as NotPetya, and that was the most expensive crime ever committed as it affected the world in critical infrastructure.
Have you noticed any attempts to do this yet?
No, we haven't seen anything yet, but about 30 groups, hacktivist groups, a lot of them pro-Russian, came out just after Israel declared war on Hamas. 25 groups came out on the side of Hamas, 5 came out on the side of Israel, all of whom are likely to be active targeting governments and companies as they profess their stance in this conflict.
Alastair MacGibbon, thank you.
Thank you.